All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning for our virtual roundtable. Today's topic is positioning for success in the new normal. I'd like to thank our sponsor, Tyler Sales, for help putting this on. We really appreciate them. For those who don't know me, my name is Justin Pelham. I'm the communication specialist with the Muskegon Lakeshore Chamber of Commerce. Um, so thank you again for joining us this morning. We'll go over a few housekeeping rules before we start. I ask that everyone please keep their mics muted during the presentation portion of this meeting. The presentation will last about 15 minutes, and then we'll move into a question and answer segment. If you have a question, please type it in the chat, or you can go into the taskbar where it says manage participants and click the raise your hand button. That'll signal to me that you have a question, and I will call on you to ask your question. So once again, we'd like to thank Tyler Sales for being our sponsor today. We have two great presenters. We have Jason Piasecki from Revel, and we have Paula Kendra from Kendra Consulting. So I will turn it over to them right now and let them talk about positioning for success in the new normal.
Okay, well, I'll get us started here. Thank you so much for inviting me, Justin. Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here with you. It's quite a situation we're going through right now. And, you know, really for the last about 7 weeks, we've all been pretty much in crisis management mode, trying to figure out how we're going to keep our businesses afloat, how we're going to keep our employees paid, and those kind of activities. But now that the governor's signaling she's going to start to reopen the economy, we need to figure out how we're going to pivot from crisis management mode into planning mode. So I pulled together a process that I'd like to share with you today for doing that. And I'm going to show you a chart that we'll make available after the program today. If I can figure out how to share my screen. So I'm going to walk you through this program that I pulled together. It's a real process that you and your team together can walk through to really get your business ready to relaunch. And the different steps that are involved are to analyze, predict, plan, and then communicate your plan. So as I said, we'll make this chart available to you later today. But let's just walk through those basic steps. As you think about moving from crisis management into a planning mode, I ask you to recognize two things that are kind of positives in this difficult situation. First is this really is an opportunity to relaunch your business with some insight and experience that you didn't have when you got started the first time around. So really rely on what you've already learned, what you know about your business going forward, and how you can make it even more successful than it has been in the past. And when you do that, I really encourage you to recognize and rely on the expertise of your team. You can leverage their insights and really work together to create a plan for the future. So let's start with how you're going to start with analyzing the business. I encourage you to use a tool that I often use with my clients, and it's something many of you are familiar with. It's a SWOT analysis. And SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And this is the time when you look at your business, really use some honest introspection here. What is your company really good at delivering to the marketplace and pleasing customers with? And what things do you struggle with? Get those captured as your strengths and your weaknesses. And then think about the marketplace around you. What kind of opportunities and threats are we experiencing right now? Make sure you capture as much as you can, think as broadly as you can. This is a brainstorming activity. So once you get your SWOT analysis completed, you move into what I'm referring to as a prediction phase of this process. And here, I think it's a good idea to do some scenario planning. The idea of scenario planning is putting together a concept of what you think could happen in the future. It's a way to really broaden your thinking and consider a very wide range of potential outcomes. So remember, if you try to do scenario planning, nobody has a crystal ball. Nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. Use your best judgment and predict a set of circumstances that you think could happen in the future. And some things that you might want to consider adding, elements that should be in your scenario are, what are different health condition scenarios that could play out? And in light of those different health conditions, what kind of government regulations might come forward for us that we need to deal with? What kind of response might happen from our competitors, and how might our customers respond? Those would be elements that I would definitely think you should include in each scenario that you put together. There are other things you can include as well. Be as broad as you can, be as imaginative as you can. And the other thing I would mention, when you do scenario planning, it's best to do an even number of scenarios. Do 2 scenarios or maybe 4 scenarios. The reason for that is if you do an odd number of scenarios, if you, for example, create 3 different scenarios, you will inevitably choose the middle scenario as the most likely one to occur. So to do an even number, 2 or 4 would be plenty. And once you have each of those different scenarios put together, which is a set of circumstances that could occur, then I think you should do an activity that I refer to as stop, start, continue. And it's a quick way to get a very high level look at the implications for your business. So you would say, what should our business stop doing in light of this set of circumstances? What should we start doing? What should we continue doing that we were doing in the past? So once you've completed both of those phases, the prediction and the analysis, now it's time to really put together a plan and translate all those different insights that you've come up with in sort of that blue sky world into an actual action plan. You begin that process by choosing the scenario that seems most likely to you. And then you put together a plan that says, we're going to take those stop, start, and continue activities and really make, really kind of blow those out and make a more robust plan. We know that the plan for reopening the economy is not clear. Again, nobody knows exactly what's going to happen. But one thing we do know from watching other countries that are ahead of us on this curve of dealing with this virus is that their economies are slowly ramping up. There's not a real spike in demand. It's going to be a slow ramp up. It's not like turning the faucet back on for demand from our customers. And again, I invite you to think about that as a positive. Take advantage of that opportunity to slowly ramp your business back up and ease back into the marketplace. It gives you time to test different parts of your plan and see what's working and what's not working. Remember that your customers have been experiencing uncertainty just like you. They don't know what's coming in the future either. So when you look at what kind of products and services you are going to make available right away coming out of the gate, make sure they are things that you're really confident in delivering. Make sure that your supply chain and your distribution partners are all on board with you to confidently deliver those products and services to your customers to help alleviate any kind of stress of your workers not being able to deliver what you promised or the customers being frustrated. Of course, every single one of your plans is going to look different depending on your industry and your business specifically, but there are a couple things that I think every plan needs to include. One is a robust plan to protect the health and safety of your workers and your employees and your customers. And the other is flexibility. Whatever scenario you dream up, whatever plan you put in place, the one thing you can count on is it's not going to be exactly right. So make sure that you build into the plan regular stopping points to review the plan and the current conditions and the ability to pivot and make changes as you need to respond to changing, economy and health conditions. Once your plan is in place, it's time to communicate. And Jason's going to talk to you a lot more specifically about communications. But the one thing I'll say is you need to make sure that you think of each stakeholder group and how you should respond to them. So of course you want to talk to your customers directly and let them know what to expect. Of course you need to talk to your employees. But don't forget those supply chain partners. Don't forget your distribution channel partners. Make sure that they know what to expect from you. Make sure you're talking to any investors that you have. Let them know what you're doing. Make sure you talk to the community at large. Again, every communication plan is going to be different. But a couple of things that every communication plan should do is to inspire confidence, be positive, and make sure that you're only promising what you can deliver. And also manage the expectations as best you can. Honesty and transparency are really critical at this time, so make sure your messaging is very forthright and honest. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jason, who's going to talk more about communication strategies and tactics.
Thanks, Paula. As Paula said, we are still in the midst of this crisis. The curve is flattening, but it's not flat yet. And you can see in the United States, we went from 100 cases 56 days ago to 1 million. And So, knowing where the end is, we're still figuring that out. One thing to keep in mind in a crisis, the 2019 Crisis Impact Report from Chris Thinking, who is a Chicago and UK-based crisis management agency, said 90% of consumers say they're likely to stick with a brand that responds well to a crisis. So this is our time as companies to shine and instill confidence in our customers, our employees, and our stakeholders. The most important thing to do right now is to get out in front of your message and don't let the narrative be adapted for you. As Paula said, this is an opportunity and one that you can look critically at your brand. And when we consider branding, we're talking about the visual things that we all think of when we think of a brand, like your logo, website, and marketing material. But you should also consider the non-visual things, your brand promise or mission. Is it relevant today? Does it need to be adapted? Your story, what does your message say to your community? And also the copy and words that you put out there. And then most importantly, we say your brand is what people say about you behind your back. So there are things that we can control as companies, and there are things that our constituents have the say on, and those are those Google reviews and conversations that people have. So it's really critical in this time to over communicate, and looking at your communication on three fronts. There's the emotional, being authentic, not losing faith in what's going on, your passion and being true to what you're all about. There's the rational and practical, all the steps in your plan to do business in this economy. Then there's the inspirational, and there's a thing called the Stockdale paradox that Vice Admiral Stockdale, who was the highest ranking prisoner in the Hanoi hotel back in the Vietnam War, said, is not losing faith in the end of the story and having confidence that we will get through this together. One thing that is essential in this time is to not stop marketing. And looking back at past history, the recession of 1981-82, companies that continued to market or increase their marketing actually increased their earnings over that time 2.5 times those that turned off marketing or ratcheted things down altogether. So your customers and your employees need to hear from you more than ever in this time. And thinking about this, if you've seen any of the memes or the videos out there that every COVID commercial is the same, I think it's okay now as marketers to shift our messages from "we're here to help" to "we're here to do business." And some of those ways that we're seeing that happen in our community is people are changing their focus from lead generation, in other words, getting more customers, to communication and education. And a few examples is iMove here, who does sports physical therapy. They can't see customers now. So they've taken their time with their trainers and they're doing online workouts and they're posting them to their social media and to YouTube. That's one thing that we have now, is we have different buckets of time. We're not driving to meetings. And if you've sat in any of these Zooms, as I'm sure we've all had, I think what we're finding is these tend to be more efficient than face-to-face meetings. And a lot of times what can be done in an hour is done in a half hour or 45 minutes. So we have different buckets of time available, and thinking creatively about how you can use your staff time to get out there and instill confidence that your company is still doing business. The Lakeshore Museum has created their Museum at Home program, where they're doing experiments and lessons with their staff at home and posting them to their website and social media. Pacific Floor Care, who makes floor cleaning equipment and machines, they're doing a series of online training videos to educate their customers. So those are just some of the ways that local companies are using this as an opportunity to stay in touch with their customers. Probably the worst thing that you could do right now is not let people know what's going on. Even if you don't know, that's a better answer than to say nothing at all, because people are going to assume the worst. Looking at this thing too is to use all the tools that we have in our tool belt as marketers, as brand, and as companies. Looking at your website, and your website is going to be one of the first places that people go to find information about your company. Have you changed your messaging in the last 45 days since we've gone to working at home? Looking at things like using those big hero images on your website to let people know you're here, you're doing business, and how you're adapting. Maybe you have an alert bar on your website that you can turn on or off with a message about how you're doing business in this economy. Sending regular email, especially for B2B audiences, is the most effective way to reach your customers. And those emails should be consistent. If you're sending out a weekly email before the COVID crisis hit, continue doing that. Maybe even ramp it up a little bit to just let people know. Also in this time, customers expect to hear from your leaders, your CEOs. They need to be out in front of your brand and your messaging. A great way to do that is to leverage video. I think I could probably have counted the number of Zoom meetings that I led 6 weeks ago on one hand. I mean, now we can do these like we're falling out of bed. And so it's using that technology to adapt and to do business in the new normal. And the great thing about video as well is it creates a personality. It's a three-dimensional and something that you can't always get with copy or with photos. So it's a great opportunity to reach your customers. Also, posting on social media and looking at what you're doing with social now and having a consistent plan for communication. One of the things too is, many of us our resources are confined in a way where maybe we're not getting the same level of revenue as in the past, so we have to get creative. Maybe you're not able to work with an outside agency or a partner on your marketing in this time, but you have employees, and who knows your brand better than your employees? Getting them out there and putting them in front of your messaging, looking at different partners in your business. Are there cross-marketing opportunities? Like Paula said, your supply chain, staying in constant touch with them so they're ready to go when the economy ramps back up. And also maybe you got some family members that can lend in and in a pinch in this time. One of the great things about this is marketing can help you weather the storm and come out of this crisis as a stronger brand and company. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Justin for any questions anyone has.
All right, thank you, Jason and Paula. Great presentation. And now we'll open it up for questions. If you have a question, you can either type it into the chat bar and I'll read the question, or you can go to the scroll bar at the bottom, click on Manage Participants, a sidebar will open up, and you can raise your hand to signify that you have a question, and I'll just call on you and you can ask your question. So with that, do we have any questions? All right, Dave, we'll start with you.
Thanks, Paula, and thank you, Jason, for the message. I just want to say a couple of things from a downtown perspective and emphasize. First off is the emphasis on comfort and confidence of your customers or your visitors to your business or institutions from the health and safety standpoint. Being out here on the west end of the city, I'm on the bike path, the Lakeshore Trail a lot, and people are using social distance. I mean, they will get off the path, which is more than 6 feet wide, and pass a very clear distance. very intentional, very purposeful. So people are really into the specifics of the masks, the gloves, and the social distancing. And you need to have whatever space you're inviting the public into in an enclosed space to have that comfort and confidence. Secondly, I want to mention something that Cindy had asked of the governor in a prior conference call earlier this week, and that's about festivals and events. Our community has for years prided ourselves on the public gatherings, be it Lakeshore Art Festival to Unity to Revel Road and parties in the park. Those are going to be non-existent this summer or very, very different. And we as downtown institutions, businesses or community that rely on that as a business generator or an accelerant to our economy, we've got to get creative about it and smart about it, and look in terms of also using the other advantage that we have always had, and that is wide spaces, open areas, great recreational opportunities in a very much a idyllic summer environment. So those are things that I think we need to worry about as a community and individual businesses. So the Take It Outdoors theme of the chamber has a lot of legs on it right now. So those are two things. And if you take a look at the festivals and events, anyone that goes downtown for Saturday's opening of the farmers market will see how different life is going to be as we get together as a community. So with that, I wish you all luck, health, and hopefully prosperity of your business. As we hit the reset button, I think we as a community are in a pretty good position.
All right, thank you, Dave. Now I have a question to both Paula and Jason. Do you have any tips for brainstorming remotely? Brainstorming has helped us come up with marketing solutions, and that is challenging now because most teams are separated. Do you have tips on how companies can brainstorm and work together?
Yeah, one of the things that we've been doing, and I think the remote brainstorming has some advantages even over the in-person. Being in this format where you have to be like a news anchor looking directly ahead, or people know you're doing something else or spacing out. I think there's a level of engagement that's enhanced even over being in person. So, what we've been doing at Revel is a lot of Zooms, a lot of Google Hangout meets, and even some of our brainstorms to kick off projects. Typically, we bring out big sticky notes and we write all over the place, keeping running Google Docs using other technology, and then also looking at recording these type of presentations, because you have a record and you can refer back to them, and I think that's valuable as well. So just looking at the technology that's available and really taking advantage of that, I think has some advantages in this type of situation.
Yeah, the only thing I would add to that is if you need to do brainstorming, and you might want to even consider doing some of it individually and then sharing documents. So, doing bullet points on even a Word document and then sharing that with one another. Another thing, like Jason said, where there's some advantages to that is we have a lot of introverts that we work with day to day who aren't very comfortable in brainstorming sessions in person. And if you allow them to work as an individual and then collaborate with others, you might get even more input from those types of individuals. So it really actually can be good to not all be in the same room for a brainstorming session.
All right, thank you for those great answers, Jason and Paula. Are there any more questions? Do you feel like there is one marketing medium over another that is working well for retail businesses?
Yeah, social media, without a doubt. And anytime we do research and surveys, social media ranks high, especially for retail and B2C, but also too, just old-fashioned, signage. How many restaurants have we all driven by where they have that sign out that says, still open for business and takeout, and that just lets people know that you're available. Certainly social. And, as I had said before, I know this question was specifically on retail, but email for B2B. And make sure your website's up to date. If your website has not changed since this whole thing started, you're missing the boat, because people are going to go there and they're going to look and see. And one thing that is Muskegon never ceases to amaze me is how the community is banded together during this situation and leveraging other people's networks. In social media, you might have 1,000, 2,000 followers or likes. In another business that has another 1,000. Just cross marketing is a great way to expand your audience, and just been seeing a ton of that around here.
All right. I have another one. What would you say as far as COVID communication fatigue and not being able to reach customers because they are just overwhelmed with information? Are you seeing that customers are feeling fatigued because of all the COVID information?
Oh yeah, I'd say we're COVIDed out, and it's okay, just reading articles. It's okay to market in this time and to get your message out, and because we want to come out of this stronger together and in business. So I think it's that shift, and it's doing it with tact and consideration of really what is your message. People want to know, if you're a bakery, how can they get a loaf of bread if they can't just walk through the door? So it's okay to do that. But I would certainly say we're here to help. We get that. We're all here to help each other.
Right. I think just being as specific as you can about what they can expect from your business. How are you going to be open for business? What's going to be available? Is it everything you normally offer? Is it, a truncated offering? Just don't worry about over communicating. Keep moving forward, because people who are loyal to your brand, they do want a connection point from you. They want to know what's happening. We're all sitting in our houses wondering, is this open? Is that open? Can I get this? What will happen if I drive my car there? Will the doors be open? Continue to communicate.
All right, I have another question. Muskegon County is really large, and we have a lot of rural areas. What's the best way to reach out to those who might not be on social media or don't have the internet out in those rural areas?
Direct mail is great for that. I was talking to someone doing some research interviews this week, and we talking about media preferences, and direct mail. United States Postal Service, they have a thing called Every Door Mail, I believe it is, where you can really blanket.
It's Every Door Direct Mail. I'm looking at it too. Sorry, Every Door Direct Mail.
Yes, where you can really target a neighborhood, you can target a zip code, and it's fairly cost effective, and so that's a great way to get your message out. I mean, how much mail do you actually get? I have 2 high school seniors and a sophomore in high school, so they are literally racing to get the mail because it's something to do, and I think all of us are kind of open to different mediums. So certainly for rural, recommend direct mail as a cost-effective way to reach people.
All right. We are getting down to that 9:30 mark, but our presenters have agreed to stay on to answer a few more questions. But before we do that, I just want to put out that you could join us tonight at 4:30 for our virtual STIR event. Our special guest will be Steve Olson, the Chamber Board Chair. He'll start off the session. It's a good time just to hang out and relax and network with all the Chamber members and everyone that is invited. So I will ask one more question, and feel free to bring them on. This one is, tech companies are going to be the big winners for COVID. Any thoughts on how companies such as machine shops with no web presence can emerge a winner?
I was waiting for you to answer that one, Paul.
Well, I think, with something like a machine shop, they probably have a smaller number of customers to be communicating with. That type of business is quite different than, a B2C, kind of business. And so I would just encourage direct communication with your customer base that you've already been dealing with, and setting expectations with them, letting them know how much you're open for business, what you're going to be able to provide for them. So I don't know that it's so different than what you've been doing in the past with a small business like that. Just make sure you're staying in communication with the customers you already have. And then of course, the partners that I mentioned before, your supply chain partners and your distribution partners that you might be working with. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you, Paula. Do we have any more questions? We'll try to get one or two more. Okay, this one's from Steve. How can we convince our customers that we need to get our receivables paid?
That is a great question, especially knowing your business, Steve, being tied into automotive and some other heavy industry. Is I think it's one-on-one conversations, and we've noticed that too. Is customers are tending to prioritize the invoices and the bills that they pay, and really looking at that. I don't really have a magic bullet for that one, other than just relying on them, and it really does let us all know who our good partners are.
All right, thanks, Jason. And with that, we're going to be closing out our Zoom meeting. A few upcoming events is we do have our Stir Networking virtual event tonight at 4:30 with our special guest, Steve Olson, the Chamber Board Chair. We also have a virtual roundtable next Thursday at 9 a.m. This one is on tourism and hospitality with Bob Lukens from Visit Muskegon. We'd like to thank Tyler Sales Company for being our sponsor today. And I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. So with that, I hope you have a great rest of your morning. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to visit muskegon.org. We have a great resource page there that we're updating often with new resources. So with that, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thanks everyone.
Thank you.